One of the great experiences on our spiritual path is Samadhi, the letting go of the separate I, the absorption in the divine, the absorption in the infinite. And this step is something that happens without our doing. We cannot do this. We are not the doer. We let go of the doer. So we surrender completely into this divine bliss. And then we surrender the one who surrenders. We surrender the doer. We human beings are very good at doing. All our life we're doing. And even we often think of people who are meditating as being very lazy because they're not doing. They're just sitting there. And sometimes in spiritual circles we say, just don't do something. Sit there. This is the way of doing. It's kind of a lazy way in a way. In one way, it's very diligent and not lazy at all. But in another way, there's this quality of absolute laziness. And what I mean by absolute laziness is we let go of even the one being lazy. That's how lazy. It's the ultimate in laziness. We're even letting go of the one who's lazy. Right? So there's not only no doing, but there's no doer. And this is the nature and the essence of Samadhi. And it's a realization that actually all our life this has also been so. This has also been true all our life. But when we think of ourselves as the doer, the one in control, the one doing things, making things happen, what would the world be without our doing? What would our life be without our doing? We're not aware of this, that we never really have been doing in this way. We've been done for. We've been not separate from all of life. Doing happens, but there is no doer. So the experience of Samadhi is the direct experience of this. One of the things that happens is it appears that the entire world has vanished, has just dissolved in Samadhi, and all there is this extraordinary bliss, existence and consciousness, and this amazing, all-encompassing bliss. It's almost overwhelming at first. And what does it overwhelm? It's total. It's just this complete bliss. Not that it's the end of anything. We can experience it at deeper and deeper levels, but it's an extraordinary experience of bliss. Just everything dissolves with this bliss. It appears that the world has dissolved and disappeared. But it's not the world that's disappeared. It's the perceiver of the world that's disappeared. And that, because there is no longer a perceiver, the way we see the world is entirely different. It appears that the world has disappeared, but it's only the perceiver of the world that has disappeared. So all the conditioned thoughts and ideas and beliefs about the world have disappeared. And what's left is this bliss, which is always underlying everything. We're not adding bliss to our life, we're uncovering it. So when the perceiver is gone, the bliss is here. We're aware of it. It's always been here, but we're aware of it when the perceiver is gone. So this last step, and this is a process, all spiritual practice, all spiritual journey is a process. It has no actual ending. But this particular step to let go of the separate self is an extraordinary step in the process of awakening. It's a big step in the process of awakening, and it's a step that we can't do. It's a step that we don't take. It takes us. It's something that's done for us. We surrender, and then we surrender the one who has surrendered. So in this way, there is complete surrender. Muji has a beautiful prayer, which is, God, please let me dissolve in you so that there is no longer a me and there is only you. Let this me dissolve in you so that there is only you. This is a common prayer. Rumi, many teachers and awakened beings have said this exact same prayer, to dissolve in God so that there is only God. And Samadhi is this experience of that. We dissolve, and what is left is the infinite. And the experience of that, while still in a body, is this enormous bliss, this enormous freedom. It's a beautiful stage of the awakening process. But we don't take that step because there is no me to take that step. It simply happens. We surrender the I and experience this. So all the doing that we do up to this point is necessary, useful, absolutely perfect. The meditation practices, the chanting, the mantra work, the self-inquiry, the surrendering. There's a lot of doing involved in surrendering. All the surrendering that we do is useful, that we do this. But at some point, we let go of even this surrendering. We let go of even this one who is surrendering. That's the final surrender. And we realize in this infinite bliss that we experience, it's always been like this. All our life, it's been like this. But we had this perception that there was an I. And this I perceived the world in a certain way. When that's gone, everything is different. We come into this experience of truth, of reality, that we cannot really describe. You know, I use the word bliss. That's as good a word as I can give to it. Many people have used this word. But without experiencing it, you cannot understand what this bliss is. Yes, it's quite extraordinary. Something else takes us over, something else that we cannot describe, that has no definition, that cannot be limited in any way. It's what we truly are. This limited self is gone. And the limited self is the center of all these conditioned thoughts, is the limited self, the I. I perceive the world. I know what the world is. I believe the world is like this. This is my opinion of the world. All of that vanishes. And with it, our perception of the world vanishes. Because this is how we perceive the world all our life. You know, we've added and changed and shifted things. It's not a continuous thing. It's one of the ways that we know it's not truth, because it's constantly shifting and changing and evolving. And when we open to this greater truth, there is not really a shifting or changing in this. There's a deepening of it, a deepening of our experience and awareness of it, but it itself doesn't change. It itself is always consistent, always reliable. And the more we marinate in this, the more this permeates us, the more it affects our life. You know, when you begin meditating and you experience greater peace and calmness, serenity, if you keep at it and you're consistent about it, this also permeates your life. So the rest of your day is also calmer than it was before. You're more peaceful in situations where you weren't peaceful before. This is a beautiful thing that happens to your life. One of the reasons why we meditate is not just for that moment of meditation, that hour or so of meditation in the morning. It permeates the rest of our life. The rest of our day and the rest of our entire life is permeated by this if we stick to it. And this experience of samadhi is like this too. It permeates our entire life. This absence of this false sense of an I stays with us. And we enter into the world and engage in the world in a very different way without having the sense of a separate I. Our relationships with people are easier, more beautiful, and people just tend to love us because there is no real separate self here. For some reason, that's extremely attractive to people. And it is because they're seeing themselves, they're seeing their true selves. And when we see people, we see this too. We see the personality and all this stuff going on with them, their stories, everything that they're telling us. But this is not so important to us because we see something else that's much more pure, consistent, and beautiful, and is always here in every person. And when we see that, they see that. We don't even have to mention it or talk about it. It's simply our seeing of it awakens this in them, and they feel wonderful. So this makes them very attracted to us. It makes us very attractive to them, because we give them this experience of their true self simply by our seeing of it, simply by our being this. There's not a lot of doing involved. And when we teach, there's not a lot of doing involved either. We simply let go, surrender into this infinite space of what we are, and let the teaching happen. Let the writing happen. Let whatever happens happen from this, because this is what is really doing the teaching. It doesn't need words. It doesn't need anything. It doesn't need any doing. It's simply here. It's the true presence of what we are. So when we first experience this samadhi, Mooji always advises that we zip ourselves in our sleeping bag and just marinate in this. When we first experience this freedom, just marinate in it. Even if it's not at the level that I'm talking about, even if it's at a lesser level, we can feel this bliss. Something is free. Something has opened. Just stay in this and do what you can not to be triggered. The reason he says marinate in your sleeping bag, zip yourself up in your sleeping bag, is because we can easily be triggered back into this sense of a personal I again. When we engage with people who know us as a certain person, it tends to trigger this feeling of a separate I again. So it's good to spend time just marinating in this, letting this permeate ourselves as much as we can, so that it becomes more solid, and we're not so easily triggered by it anymore. And eventually we don't get triggered at all. But in the beginning, until that happens, we need to spend some time in solitude, isolation, marinating in this, so that it can permeate us completely, so that our awakening can permeate us and become solid in us, and not just become an isolated experience in our life, a wonderful experience in our life, and then it appears to be gone, right? We don't want that to happen. This is truth. We want to be our truth. We want to not only experience our truth, but be our truth, and bring this to the world, bring this to others, this truth, to be a conduit for the divine, which is what we are. And we're not something else. We're just this conduit. And eventually we see this. And when we marinate in it fully and experience this, and there's a great incentive to do it because we're in bliss, right? It feels wonderful to be in this state of freedom. And the way we tell when the sense of a self has been triggered is we don't feel like that anymore. Somehow the bliss is not here, and we're feeling something less than bliss. Maybe not suffering, just less than bliss, just less than this incredible aliveness and presence. And that's how we know that there has been a triggering, a contraction. And that itself can teach us too. Having those experiences say, oh, that's the difference. Here's the contrast. Contraction, unlimited freedom, right? We can feel it in our bodies. So we know from this. Our mind is the last to know, but in our bodies we experience this unlimited freedom and bliss, or contraction, not unlimited freedom or bliss. So this is how we know. So staying and marinating in this unlimited freedom and bliss is important. It solidifies this, and it takes time. We've gone through an incredible transition to come through this limited, confined, separate self, even while we're on the spiritual path, and this complete freedom. This is a great transition when this happens. This is a great awakening. And so we want to let this really permeate our life, really settle into everything, every cell and molecule of our bodies, every aspect of our being. And doing this, it cleans out the personal self. It does it. We're not doing it. Presence itself does this. This is why we're not doing anything at this point. It's the laziest of being lazy. There's not even a being lazy. It's just absolute surrender. Just absolute letting go, and letting life itself work on us, do its thing with us, show us this truth and have us be this truth. And this is what we bring to the world. So it's important that we spend some time isolated from the world, because we're going to be triggered in order to let this fully permeate in us. And then, when we're ready, we bring this into the world. And it can happen in stages, as it did with me, a certain level of this, of quite a bit of silent solitude and solo silent meditation and retreats, and then going back into the world when it tells me. Because again, it's something else that's telling me this. It's not me deciding to do it. I know when I need to have this long period of retreat, and I know when it's time to go back in the world. Like, it's not me that knows this. It's not a separate me. There's this infinite presence is what knows it and guides me through a feeling in my body, intuition, if you will. There's an intuitive sense in the body about what to do and how to do it. And I allow this to do it. It's like this bliss is teaching me itself. This is what's teaching me, this infinite bliss and freedom. And it's what's guiding me on what to do. So I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to be a doer. I don't have to be a decider. I don't have to know anything. This knows. And I trust this.